decades, essentially, until his death in 2023. So just as we unpack, some of the things that have been said to you, it just tells you, the kind of person and legacy that he leaves behind. For us, of course, other journalists of the SABC also spread across, KZN, just bringing us that rolling coverage as, of course, the Amazulu traditional Prime Minister, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi's body is currently being accompanied by the Amabutho as well as the IFP members, some community members, just back to his royal homestead in KwaPhindangene. Ayanda, I'm talking about just some of the songs that are being sung here. Of course, even though we're saying that it is somewhat celebratory, a lot of people actually think that there will be a void now that Prince Buthelezi has died.
Well, certainly, Unati, that is definitely something that has been said. Of course, firstly by the family. To each of the delegations that came to visit the family, his son, Tutugo, saying that the house already feels empty without their father. So the family themselves are feeling this loss. We, of course, heard it from the IFP leaders themselves, from the branches right up to the national structure of the party. IFP leaders saying they are at a loss and don't know how they're going to continue without Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. But of course, they have to, in his honor, in his legacy, they have to continue with his legacy. So definitely from the traditional leaders as well that we've seen, to their Zulu regiments, their biggest concern has been that he leaves a huge void and that they don't know who is going to be able to fit into his shoes and who is going to be able to lead the regiments in the manner in which he did. Of course, he served the Amazulu nation for decades, over 7 decades. He led and served 3 kings, King Cyprian Zulu, King Zwelithini, Goodwill Zwelithini Zulu, and more recently King Misuzulu Zwelithini. So that has really been one of the concerns that has come through. Well, even from the community members, Unatu, that have been coming out in their numbers over this past week. The people of Ulundi, people of the Zululand district, saying to us that they are at a loss. That Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, they're speaking us through the development, what they say he's done for this community. In fact, Unati, very shortly we are going to be approaching the town of Ulundi, and many of our viewers will remember during the 2021 civil unrest how Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi came out at 93 years old in the freezing cold at night. He came out into the town to stop people that were intending on looting. And so those are some of the sentiments that people have shared with us, that this town today would probably be in ruins had it not been for him at that age to come out to speak to the people that were there, but also to make them understand what destroying their town would mean to them. He was also very instrumental. There was looting that took place in the nearby town of KwaNongoma, and many of the stores there were destroyed, leading to a situation where hundreds of people, if not thousands, could have gone hungry. And we understand that he was instrumental in ensuring that trucks were brought all the way from Johannesburg, bringing food to the area of KwaNongoma. And so it's such things that the community are saying that they will will remember Prince Mangosuthu, as well as, of course, the development as we are moving through the town here. Many of the structures and the buildings that we are seeing were buildings that were built under the IFP leadership, under his leadership. So certainly he leaves a huge a void, and I think it's why we've seen so many community members come out, even those who are not IFP supporters, but they are all come out just at least to see a glimpse of the cortege as it makes its way through the town. In fact, if we look at this route that we're traveling on, Unati, there was a more quieter route that has less traffic. They could have chosen to use, but the family and the IFP deciding to make their way right through the heart of the Ulundi CBD, so that the people who have come out here in town will be able to at least see the funeral cortege as it makes its way through the town. I'm sure you can see now in our visuals, hundreds of people have come out. Their phones are out, they're waving, they're cheering as they bid their farewells to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi.
Absolutely. I mean, it's also very important, as you say, that people get to witness this moment, particularly because when we think about tomorrow and the capacity that is allowed in terms of the funeral. I mean, we already know that Prince Buthelezi's family has asked many people to actually observe the funeral at home via television, because they are worried about, if they will be able to accommodate everybody. I mean, if the memorial service was anything to go by, they know how many people want to witness this occasion. Right, of course, as you can see there, hundreds of Amabutho accompanied there by community members lining the streets, walking the long distance, accompanying the late Prince Buthelezi's body home. All roads at this moment leading to KwaPhindingane. I understand that Simpiwe is on the line with us. Simpiwe, of course, we are witnessing this moment, of course, this procession cutting across Ulundi town. Very significant at this point in time. I would imagine the family thought it important that everybody, gets a glimpse of this, procession as, all roads lead to, of course, Buthelezi's home, and of course, as a lead up to the funeral that will be taking place tomorrow.
Carrying the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is now en route to his home at KwaPhindangene, the rural village of Mahlabathini. And many of the people who are here, are in a celebratory mood. I haven't seen many people crying, but what I've seen is people who are joyous, who are screaming, who are singing, taking out their cell phones to record this historic moment. Because as you would imagine, Unati, that almost everyone here knows Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi as the traditional Prime Minister, having served the Amazulu nation for over really 7 decades. You are seeing there in your visuals hundreds and hundreds of Amabuto who are accompanying the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi lining up the streets. I mean, really, from where I am, I can certainly tell you that the rural town of Ulundi has really come to a standstill, with thousands of people, lining up the streets, witnessing, this historic moment as hundreds of Amabuto and IFP supporters gather really to, accompany the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi to his home at Mahlabathini. The journey, Unati, as we have been saying earlier on, is about 10 kilometers from the mortuary to the home of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. As I speak to you now, we are just about to exit the town and now heading to the home of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Police have had their hands full trying to contain the situation, as you would imagine. Many media houses and many vehicles wanting to be part of this particular moment where we are seeing hundreds and thousands of people, gathering, along the route where Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi's body is being taken to his home. This is the final journey that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi will be making to his home before, of course, the official funeral. The special official funeral category 1 that he has been, accorded by President Cyril Ramaphosa. In your visuals, I'm not sure what you are seeing, but I'm seeing the IFP President Velenkosini Tabisa leading Amabuto as they are busy, on that walk to KwaPhindangene, as they are accompanying the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Many residents, Unati, that we have been speaking to from this particular area of Ulundi, since the news broke of Prince Buthelezi's demise, they have been, saying that they are devastated because they regarded him not only as a political leader, but as a community leader, really, who was able to assist in many areas of their lives. Some of them, of course, speaking during the memorial service, which was held on Wednesday, saying that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has lived many lives in one life, really, having been an inkosi of the Buthelezi clan at the age of 29, and also having served the Amazulu nation as the traditional prime minister since for over 7 decades, and also, of course, having formed the Inkatha Freedom Party, the IFP, which is the main opposition party here in KwaZulu-Natal in 1975, and of course handing over the reins to current President Velenkosini Hlabisa, who is part of this group of Amabutho that is on this journey accompanying Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. A lot has been said, Unati, about his legacy and his contribution in helping to shape, democracy in South Africa. I mean, some of the IFP leaders in the province going as far as to say that they don't think there will be anyone like him in the near future. I mean, that speaks to the caliber of a man that they regard him to be. But of course, as they are celebrating his life and celebrating his achievements, of the clashes that were there between the ANC as well as the IFP, especially in the province of KwaZulu-Natal in the early 80s as well as the late 1990s, where we saw nearly about 20,000 people losing their lives during, of course, those clashes. We have had an opportunity, to interact with himself a couple of years ago, and we posed these questions about the clashes, and he was always adamant that at no point did he order any
Yes. Okay. All right, Mama. Are they still on our visuals? Okay, sharp. Okay, bye. Hello? Hello? Hi. Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Francis, a very good evening to you and good evening to ten kilometers to KwaPhindangene. They are on their knees as a sign of respect, as the founder of the IFP, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi's coffin passes by. We're seeing women, we're seeing men on their knees, and this is a sign of respect. Many of them saying that indeed this is a dark day for the people of Ulundi, for the people of the Zululand district. Many speaking about the void that is now will be left following the passing of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi from Amabuto, the Zulu regiments who have lauded and praised him for serving the Zulu nation, the AmaZulu nation, for over 7 decades. To the family, of course, they've repeatedly been saying how difficult a time this is for them, and of course for the IFP, from the IFP members right up to the leadership of the IFP, many of them saying that they are at a loss. These are going to be big shoes to fill. Many saying that this area will never be the same again. If you look around the area and some of the development that we are seeing here, Francis, many saying that this is the work of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, and they were still looking forward to a lot more that he was going to do. Of course, he had retired from politics, handing over the reins to the now president of the IFP, Velenkosini Hlabisa, but they continue to say that he was someone that community members of the IFP, leaders of the IFP could always go to for counsel. Whatever this community needed, he was always there for them, and he certainly had big plans to further develop this area of Ulundi, and of course moving towards the rural village of Mahlabathini, where he was born. The amount of people that have come out here today, young and old, many of them saying that they could not miss an opportunity to at least catch a glimpse for them to be able to pay their respects, either in song, by cheering, by kneeling on the ground as a sign of respect to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, of course, as he makes his final journey home to Mahlabathini, where he was born in 1928. Earlier on, we saw the town of Ulundi, Francis, come to a complete standstill. Stores were closed. Hundreds of people coming out to catch a glimpse of the funeral cortege as it was making its way through the town. Just of course, we're just going to try now to, and we do apologize to our viewers, we're just going to try now to move slightly, just to pan our camera so that you get a view of what we can see behind us. Amabutu still walking beside the hearse. And the plan, from what we understood, speaking to the leaders of the Zulu regiments, was that they were going to walk at least 3 kilometers. We were then going to be met by another group of Amabutho that were then going to take over. And as we continue this 10-kilometer journey, Amabutho are waiting at different points to take over. And of course, when we get to the KwaPhindangene residence, the home of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the regiments or Amabutho under the Buthelezi clan will be waiting to receive Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, traditional Prime Minister of the Zulu nation, who has served 3 kings, from King Cyprian Kabhekuzulu to King Goodwill Zwelithini Kabhekuzulu, and now the reigning King Misuzulu Zwelithini. Of course, you would have also during the week heard us speak to the regent of the Buthelezi clan, Inkosi Umpiyakhe Buthelezi. Of course, he has, due to the fact that Prince Buthelezi was involved in politics and also was appointed as a traditional prime minister, he could not then assume both positions of being the prime minister as well as the regent of the Buthelezi clan. And he then has appointed regents. The current regent is the 9th regent of the Buthelezi clan, having started in 1971. And he, together with the king's praise singer, Mr. Ubaba Buzecheni Mdletshe, they are in one of the vehicles directly behind the hearse. Of course, they Inyosi Mdletshe, or the king's praise singer, continues to chant Buthelezi clan names as we make our way through this 10-kilometer journey to KwaPhindangene. The visuals that you see behind us is the funeral cortege. Hundreds of people that have come out to bid their farewells to Inkosi Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Once we get to the home, we understand that the body will then be removed from the hearse and taken into a hut where the elders of the Buthelezi clan will then go inside, and certain rituals will then be performed for about an hour. Thereafter, the body is going to be taken out to a marquee that has already been prepared for mourners who are then going to be able to come and pay their respects. The family is saying and indicated that it is going to be a closed casket. But members of the public and mourners will still be able to get an opportunity to come through today for the service that is going to take place once we get to the family home. In your visuals now you're seeing the hearse sitting in front of the main hearse is Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi's son, Zuzifa Buthelezi.
All right, thank you very much.
Now moving a little bit faster, Francis. It's moving a little bit faster now, Francis, and that is because we are racing against time. You remember that it was said by the family as well as IFP that they need to get the body home before the sun sets. And so that is why we are now seeing these photos racing a little bit faster because they have to get to the homestead before the sunset. Francis, I'm going to leave it with you for now as we continue to watch our vehicle as we move a little bit faster. We'll be chatting to you a little bit later, Francis.
All right, thank you very much, Ayanda. And yes, the scene has certainly changed earlier. The cortege, this procession was moving very slowly with members of the regiments, the Amabutu, flanking the vehicles on both sides. That's why it was moving slowly. But as Ayanda says,
we're on the back of a van. He can't check levels now. We're on the back of a van. We can't check levels now. Sorry.
Before sunset, they want to get this vehicle home. She did say that there would be Amabutu along the way, so possibly a changing, as it were, of the guard. They were initially going to walk for a few kilometers, then others would be involved, and finally we will see members of the Buthelezi clan receive Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi's body. Right, let's bring in some analysis now. He has been the face of the IFP since the 1970s. Professor Becky Mngomezulu says the IFP is facing its toughest test after the death of the founder of the party, Buthelezi. Professor Mngomezulu is director of the Center for the Advancement of Non-Racialism and Democracy at the Nelson Mandela University. He joins us now. Prof, before we look at the IFP, what is to come, any comments on how this procession is being received by people of Ulundi who, as our reporters say, feel that they really benefited from the proximity to the Buthelezi homestead and to the person himself?
Thank you very much, Francis. Yes, indeed. This should not come as a surprise. For someone who has been in office for this long, there are a number of things that he has done, including, of course, building the offices at Ulundi, where the KwaZulu government was housed, and then, of course, many other structures that have been built during his reign, and then many other also community projects that were carried out during his reign. So it doesn't come as a surprise that we have many people coming in their numbers to pay their last respect. Even if they don't make it to the actual funeral tomorrow, it's in fact in order for them to show their respect today, and then make sure that they do the kinds of things that Ayanda was showing, people kneeling down, whether male or female. That is a sign of respect in appreciation of all the things that he has done, including building factories at Mahlabathini and a number of other projects. So you'll see and hear more people, of course, reflecting on some of those things that Prince Buthelezi did during his lifetime.
And in terms of the Amabutu, I mean, we heard that there would be more than 50 buses bringing people from Johannesburg to Durban. I guess for anybody who's part of a military regiment and feels that they should be there, this was the weekend to travel down to Ulundi.
Absolutely, not only from Gauteng, but from across the country, more especially different parts of KwaZulu-Natal, up to the border with the Swatini, Mozambique, where I come from, up to the border with the Eastern Cape, and many others. So, because even if you don't get a chance to have a glimpse at the hearse, but by mere fact of you being there, psychologically, you are there at the funeral. So therefore, you will have a number of those people doing that. And the fact that you have an estimated 50 buses coming from Gauteng should also not come as a surprise, because outside of KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng is one province. That is a number of people who originally come from KwaZulu-Natal, or are not necessarily from KwaZulu-Natal, but are Zulus or subscribe to the Zulu nation. So basically then, you have a number of those people, and some people who just be wanting to see how the funeral goes or how the funeral unfolds. So you'll definitely, we are going to have a number of those people. Most of them went there at work in the mines, but then others just went to stay there, but they still have allegiance to the to KwaZulu-Natal, and therefore they have allegiance to the Zulu nation, and therefore by implication to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who was the traditional prime minister of the Zulu nation.
And we now have an understanding of what to expect tomorrow. I will reveal some of those details of the official funeral category 1. But do you agree with me, Prof, that what we've seen already and what we will continue to see are perhaps the different aspects of Prince Buthelezi himself? There's the religious side, we've seen prayer services, he was an Anglican, then the traditional side, and we'll see the Buthelezi clan and the rituals being done tonight, and then also the state side, a long-term MP, and he is going to be given a eulogy by the state president.
Yes, indeed. In fact, when I was talking to some of your colleagues, I described Buthelezi as a round character, and in the language of cricket as an all-rounder, because he has all those identities which we have just alluded to, being the leader of the IFP, and then of course defining him as a politician, being the traditional prime minister, being the traditional leader of the Buthelezi clan, being a member of parliament at national level, being a member of Christian faith. So all of those identities are correct, and therefore we'll have bits and pieces of that. When his eldest daughter, Princess Tembi, was addressing some of your colleagues, she indicated that when she saw him, he indicated the types of songs, religious songs that he wants to be sung during his funeral. So we'll have all of those elements brought together, and then of course the state will have to play its role like they normally do in the funeral of this category. So they will be performing those kinds of duties, and then of course the regiments will definitely play their role either as members of the Buthelezi clan or as members of the Zulu nation, because Buthelezi was associated to both. So we'll definitely see most of those happening.
All right, space for all the facets. Professor, you have penned an opinion piece looking at what happens for the IFP now, and the problem has been that Buthelezi has always been a shadow or an umbrella figure, depending on how you look at it, over the party. So what now? You say it'll be a test of the political maturity of the IFP.
Absolutely. The IFP's current leadership will be put to the test because all along from 1975 to date, or from the first democratic elections in 1994, Buthelezi has been the face of the IFP. So whenever they were conducting during an election or on the eve of an election, be it a general election, that is national and provincial, or local government election, they always invoked Prince Buthelezi saying that he's the man who can trust, which is why even the motto of the party says "Setembe," meaning trust us, simply because our leader is the man who can trust. Now the question becomes, with him now no longer there, will that kind of support be present, or will people look the other way as they normally do when a key person has disappeared? So those are some of the key questions. And of course the fact that Buthelezi was able to garner support from young and old, then the question would be, with the current leadership, are they able to amass support in the same magnitude, or will they in fact go down as it were, and then of course resulting in the party not performing in the way it has performed? So those are some of the questions. There are no simple answers, Francis, because we'll just wait and see what's going to happen, how they are going to support SABC, for example, who is now the leader of the party, who is also going to be tested, because all along he has enjoyed support from Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi and those close to him. And now that Buthelezi is not here, then the question is, whenever the people who attack him from within, will he be able to withstand that? Whenever people attack him from outside the IFP, will he be able to withstand that? So those are some of the critical questions, not just for SABC, but for the IFP in its entirety.
And of course the big test is coming, elections next year. So we will see if voters were voting for Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi or for the party, looking at the support they receive. Professor Becky Ngomezulu is with us. Please stay with us, Professor. But let me cross to my colleague Sipiwe Makanya. And just for a description, if you've just tuned in, of what you're seeing on your screen earlier, this procession to the homestead was going very slowly, with the Amabutu flanking the vehicle with the casket, but now it is speeding along. Simpiwe, what can you tell us? Let's try again. Simpiwe, tell us what you're seeing from your vantage point. How close is this procession to the homestead right now?
Your call has been placed.
All right, our call has been placed on hold. We do have reporters on the ground. Of course, they're also moving very quickly with the convoy now. We heard from Ayanda earlier that the rush really is to get the body back to the palace before sunset. Earlier it was going slowly, and that gave a chance for the people of Ulundi town to come out in their numbers. You can still see the people on the roads lining up to pay their last respects as the cortege really flashes by at the moment. All right, let's see if Simpiwe can hear me now. Simpiwe, tell us what you're looking at. We're seeing the procession. It was speeding. It's down right now. Tell us where you are and what you're seeing and what we can expect.
Yes, President, here now. I can hear you now. The procession where Prince Mangosuthu was born, and the body has now left the rural town of Ulundi, and I see to the side now a few people that are sitting on the side of the room. The little come to the road that was in houses next to the home. They are waiting their flags, they are waiting their hands and checking from those. And from where I am, say that they are just about 2 or 3 kilometers away now from the home of ISP founder Prince Mangosuthu thousands and thousands of people, lining up the street, waving ISP flags, taking out their cell phones, recording this specific moment when the bodies of the nation, Prince Mangosuthu is now being taken in his home in the rural village of Mahlabathini. I had a citation to you and Professor Mangosuthu, who was talking about the politics of the ISP. Now that Prince Mangosuthu is no more, this is, of course, the influence and the support that the current president, from the rest of the party. And of course, it was secret that the other issues within the ISP, particularly about the issue of leadership of the party. And I think you how people who have converged and led to the home of the now converge about 500 or so meters away from the home of many of them they come here to pay their respect and how people have to dedicate his life over 7 decades. The position of the traditional prime minister to the nation. And obviously, about the legacy of the politician, particularly from
All right, we've lost Simpiwe Makanya talking about that procession. We apologize for the poor sound. Of course, this is a convoy in motion, and our reporters are with it, moving from the Ulundi mortuary to Kwapinangeni, the homestead where the body is expected to be received by Mangosuthu from the Buthelezi clan, and there will be a ritual ceremony tonight, and some will be able to come in and pay their last respects. That was told to us at a marquee, but it will be a closed casket. The rush is to get the body home, as it were, before sunset. Well, we have been in conversation with Professor Becky Mangosuthu, looking at the political legacy of Prince Buthelezi and what it means for the IFP now. Also, of course, the emotions that have been brought up by his death, many remembering him as a hero, somebody involved in liberation, involved in post-apartheid South Africa, the course of history. Others looking at his contested legacy. Under him, the IFP was found, was implicated in many killings, although he says he did not commission any of them. Professor, you're back with us. We were talking about the President, Nkosini Hlabisa. I mean, how has he been doing in trying to consolidate his own support base? So we were looking at the issue of personality, of the fact that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi's picture has still been on election posters even after he stepped down.
Francis, you are asking a very critical question. In fact, I think that the IFP could have handled the issue differently. When we recall that until 2012, there was no deputy president in the IFP. The only person who was leading the party was Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Until then, in 2012, they then elected that is Nkosi Buthelezi from Bongweni to be the deputy. So at that time, there are people who said at least now there is a deputy president and there is a succession plan, and they were even thinking that Nkosi Buthelezi was going to be the next president. But then, of course, that was never to be because soon thereafter, the leadership of the IFP decided that unanimously agreed that Nkosini Hlabisa was going to be Buthelezi's successor. As an individual, Hlabisa is a humble person. I happen to know him because he was my classmate at the University of Zululand. He's a humble person, and some people might take that disadvantage because they want someone who be bold out there talking loudly. He's not that kind of a person. He's a humble person, and then of course he has been a loyal member of the IFP for many years. I remember during the times when we were at the University of Zululand, we knew who the members of the IFP were, who the members of the Youth League were. Those of us who were not members of the IFP could look into them as to what they were doing and how they were doing it. Hlabisa and Skonde, and of course there was another one called Mutula. The three of them, the trio, they were known to be staunch supporters of the IFP. And since then, he has moved up the ladder, becoming a mayor at some point. So he's the kind of a person whose credentials cannot be doubted. But in terms of the charisma, he would never be matched with Buthelezi. As a matter of fact, there's no single member of the IFP that I think of that would match Buthelezi's caliber, mostly because people saw him as being equivalent to the IFP. You could not talk about IFP without talking about Buthelezi. But then when Hlabisa emerged victorious, then because he was elected without any opposition in 2019, then people said, okay, we're now opening a new page. Unfortunately, then there are things that did not change. For example, like the point we are making, the face of Prince Buthelezi was still on the t-shirts, and some people were saying that, how can that be when we already have a new leader? Then the explanation given was that this is just to honor Buthelezi, at least in the 2019 election and then in the 2021 election. The understanding was that after that, they were going to change it. And then we'll wait and see, because we have elections coming next year, if they do it. My suspicion is that they might retain Buthelezi's face and argue that the election coming next year will be in honor of Buthelezi. So let's just watch the space and see how they are going to handle it. But on the other side, this does not
sorry to cut in, that would be an interesting strategy. So harnessing the legacy of Prince Buthelezi in next year's elections. Please hold that thought and stay with us. But Ayanda Mplongo is on the ground, and of course we're getting closer to the homestead. Ayanda, tell us what you can see.
Thank you, Francis. Yes, we are about, I'd say, less than a kilometer away now from the homestead. Of course, we are going to be moving now a little bit slower because the group of Amabuto that was waiting to receive the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has now joined the funeral cortege, and they are ahead of us. If you see in our visuals from our vantage point, they have now surrounded the hearse as they make its way closer to Kwapindangene. You are seeing scores of local community members of the IFP, young and old, that have been lining the streets. Since we last spoke, Francis, it's thousands of people that have come out, completely bringing the area of Wanongoma to a standstill. And of course now this is the road that Prince Mangosuthu, when he was going home, and now he makes his last journey here to his home. Of course, as I indicated earlier on, Francis,
phela ke umntwana kaPhindangene ekade engundunankulu wesizwe samaZulu cishe ke iminyaka evile kwengamashumi ayisikhombisa. Kuningi ke osekukhulunyiwe ngomntwana wakwaPhindangene, ikakhulukazi ngeqhaza lakhe ekuzameni ke ukuletha ubumbano endlunkulu, njengalokhu ke phela kulokhu kukhona ke inqushunqushu khona lapha ke endlunkulu. Kanjalo ke futhi nangeqhaza lakhe njengosopolitiki lapha eNingizimu Afrika, umbukelo uzokhumbula ukuthi wake waqokwa ke ngo-1994 ukuthi ke abe ke ngungqongqoshe obhekeleleke izindaba zasekhaya. Njengamanje ke amabutho asiyasondela ekhaya lakaMntwana wakwaPhindangene, nekuzothi ke uma ngabe ke umzimba wakhe usufikile bese ke ithuba ke lomndeni kuba ilona etholakalayo ukuthi ke ukwazi ukugcina ke amanye amasiko awo ngaphambi kokuthi ke atshale kusasa ke kulindeleke ke izikumbi zabantu esingathi ke cishe ke zinganiselwa ke ku-20,000 ukuba zibuthane lapha enkundleni yezemidlalo Ondini ukuzovalelisa enkosini ke yakwaPhindangene uMangosuthu Buthelezi. Angibusele intambo kona studio. Yes, I can hear you.
Bona masingena nazo kumathasa.
Now at the main gates of Kwapindangene residence, and as I speak to you, the Amabutho that have been accompanying the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi are at the main gate of his home, where they are going to be taking his body inside the residence. It's not quite clear though at the moment, Francis, if the thousands or hundreds rather of Amabutho and IFP supporters who have been accompanying the body will be allowed to enter the residence of Kwapindangene. As you would imagine, thousands of them have been, lining up the streets since that journey began from the mortuary all the way to the Kwapindangene village in Mahlabathini. The first group of Amabutho is now standing next to the main entrance of the Kwapindangene residence, as of course that has carrying the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi is also, approaching the main gate of his home. From here, Francis, we believe that once the body has entered the residence, then there is going to be some family rituals that are going to be performed by the family This, of course, leading up to the funeral service that is going to be held tomorrow, which was declared by President Cyril Ramaphosa as a special official funeral category 1. On my visuals, Francis, I can see Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Of course, he's accompanying the hearse that is carrying the body, which is now about to enter the residence of Kwapindangene. The rural town of Ulundi came to a standstill, Francis, throughout the afternoon, really, when we saw thousands of residents, and not just IP supporters, but also just residents in their normal clothes, waving and taking out their cell phones, recording this very historic moment, because you would understand that many of the people who live in this rural area of Ulundi, held Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi in high regard. When we spoke to some of them earlier on in the week, they said that he stood for the development of this particular area, and he also stood for the AmaZulu royal household being united. He was hailed for a number of really initiatives in uniting the AmaZulu nation. As I speak to you, Francis, I believe the main gate has now been opened for the hearse that is carrying the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi to enter the residence of Kwapindangene, and the hundreds of IFP supporters as well as AmaZulu regiments, Amabutho, have now been told to stand next to the gate to allow the hearse to make its way inside the premises of the residence, Francis.
ukuthi sime la abendaba uma ufuna ungena bangangena awusho ngani ukuthi umqambi manga
Singing there in the background, they have been Siyadela umuntu wazi ukuthi ngibukwane. Siyadela nje umuntu wazi ukuthi ngibukwane Jehova. Siyadela umuntu wazi ukuthi ngibukwane.
Ubukela lento ephethe uthi ayikusinde.
Sinde ba. Sinde bani. khona ukwazi kula ukwazi ukhona lana isidingo yo
Now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face I know in part, but then I shall know even though as I am known.
None of us lives to himself, none of us dies to himself. If we live for the Lord, and if we die for the Lord. So then whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's.
The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting mountains.
Father's house are many, if it were not, I would have told, I am going there to prepare the place to it.
Eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart conceived what God has prepared for those who love Him.
sikholwa ukuthi uJesu wafa wabuye wavuka ngakho siyakholwa ukuthi uNkulunkulu uyabaletha abaleleyo uJesu kanye naye nokuthi kuzanani ngalamazwi.
Walking and praying, and even in this procession we've seen facets of the life of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, the traditional side with the Amabuthu flanking the vehicle carrying the casket, now the religious side, and of course there was the political stately side, and we know that dignitaries have arrived at the residence in KwaZulu-Natal. Let's go back as that prayer, that walking prayer continues.
Nazinto ezizayo akuba namandla safanisa nothando kaNkulunkulu oluKristu Jesu Nkosi yethu.
The SABC News' Natasha Puri is at the homestead where the body has arrived, and of course the idea was that the arrival would happen before sunset. Natasha, what is happening right now? And there were so many people trying to get in. Just tell us about the access control, who's been allowed in, and what is happening from your vantage point.
What you're seeing right now are the various, church leaders that are actually walking ahead of the family, and behind them is Mabutho. Of course, just at the far end, I can see the spokesperson of the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi's political home, Mkhululeko Hlengwa, as well as IFP President Mr. Mahlabathini Francis. Of course, what we saw when these church leaders came in, as well as his longtime friend Reverend Musa Zondi, as well as Bishop Thabo Makgoba, as them leading the family in prayer. And of course, you can see various family members visibly sad. Francis, of course, this is as the family will be paying their last respects to the Zulu Prime Minister, and of course the head of the Zulu clan, Francis. We've seen a lot of people, friends, families, some from his political home in this past week coming in and paying their respects. Some saying that really a tall giant has actually fallen. The baobab, some have said, of the Zulu nation has fallen, Francis. A lot of people just talking about the great man that the late Zulu Prime Minister actually was. Today we're just speaking with various community members in and around this area, and of course they've been saying that there's so much development that the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was actually invested in his area. Because of him, Francis, there is a hospital here, a clinic. Because of him, there are jobs for the people here, there are schools, and therefore he will be really missed. He was described as a man who really loved the Zulu nation and fought for the rights and championed the rights of the Zulu nation. Quite interesting to know that Francis, in the 1950s, he had actually, formed Ithala Bank, and this bank had actually grown. Right now, it's evolved over the years. It has over 39 branches, and of course, over 300,000 clients across the country. And of course, this bank was actually established, Francis, for especially rural people, those who don't have access to commercial banks. And we heard the CEO of Ithala Bank yesterday saying that the local bank in this area will be renamed to the Dr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi in honor of his name and in honor of his vision, Francis, what he stood for, what he stood for and what he meant to the Zulu nation. Remember, this was a man who was an advisor, Francis, to three kings throughout his life and in his tenure. King Cyprus Begizulu, King Goodwill Zwelithini, and King Misizulu. And of course, what you're seeing right now are various church leaders, of course, just walking and waiting for the family. Of course, they'll be ushered in this tent behind me, Francis, where it looks like a service will be held for him. Early on, we spoke to his son, Josefa Buthelezi, and of course, he had said that later on there would be a church service for him. And of course, you would understand that the family will then be spending time with him. Remember, this is in line with cultural and traditional rights that need to be afforded to the prince, of course, as the chief of the Buthelezi clan. So, Francis, what you're seeing right now are those visuals of these church leaders that are then leading the family members behind, and of course, the IFP leader there, Ubab Belenkosini, Hlabisa, Francis. Of course, they will then usher the various family members into the tent where a church service will be held there at the far end, Francis. I'm not so sure if Kwazima can show you. The family members are being led inside the tent. And of course, after that, you can see the church leaders, the IFP president there, Mr. Hlabisa. And there you can see the Archbishop, Mr. Thabo Makgoba, leading some of the family members inside the service. A lot of praise, a lot of salutation has been pouring in and coming in, not only from South Africans, Francis, but of course from the international community. You've heard there, no surprise, by former Nigerian President, Mr. Obasanjo, just singing of his praises, and also, Francis, just earlier on this year, if you remember, there was that Prince Mangosuthu lecture that was held earlier on this year, and in that lecture, you had the former Nigerian president just labeling and describing the relationship between the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi and the late South African former statesman Nelson Mandela as diplomatic, Francis. He recalls many a times that he visited former President Nelson Mandela, the late Nelson Mandela, in Robben Island, and the things that he had to say about the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, saying that he was indeed a man of peace. And we've heard these sentiments from his political home, the IFP, saying that this is a man who brought about peace, who brought about stability, in the 1980s and the 1990s, Francis, where we saw that acrimonious relationship with the ANC, of course, that unfortunately spilled out to that political violence. Some label it as black on black violence, Francis, and the mountain calls that have been coming in here, Francis, is that the two parties need to make peace and need to reconcile. This was echoed out by the long-standing friend of the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, Reverend Musa Zondi, saying that the ANC and the IFP need to come together and reconcile. Francis, for the sake of the people of South Africa, and the Reverend Musa Zondi had been saying, Francis, that this was the late Prince Mangosuthu's dying wish, that Francis, both parties, the ANC, of which the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi actually belonged to. Remember, he served in the ANC Youth League when he was a student in Fort Hare, alongside, people like Z.K. Matthews, Kenneth Kaunda, the likes of Robert Mugabe. And this is just the wish. His dying wish, his last wish, that the two parties reconcile. We heard there from the ANC Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, saying that in honor of his memory, the memory of the late Mangosuthu Buthelezi, reconciliation needs to happen between the two parties. I mean, we saw at his memorial service there, IFP President Velenkosi Nhlabisa saying that the ANC had actually vilified the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, but also pledging there and vowing that as the IFP they will carry out his legacy, and in carrying out his legacy they will ensure that the party actually grows in leaps and bounds. And this is very crucial, Francis, because next year you would recall that the country is actually going to a watershed election, Francis. And of course, we just recently saw in the recent weeks or months where the IFP had joined the multi-charter party for South Africa, where the aim for this coalition or pre-coalition government is to actually unseat the ANC government. Francis, what you're hearing and what you're seeing right now are salutations from the family. If I'll just allow us to actually hear and see what's going on right now.
Now, I believe is the casket being taken out of that vehicle, or preparations to do so. The body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has arrived at the Mahlabathini residence, the Buthelezi homestead. It will be taken into that structure called a hut or a tent, where there will be some rites performed for about an hour. We understand only family members will be involved in that. Then the closed casket, as per the family wishes, will be taken into a marquee where more people can pay their respects. And we've seen today an outpouring from people on the ground in Ulundi town, in the areas surrounding this homestead, talking about the work that the Prince did in the community. Let's just listen in as that casket is moved forward. Religious, traditional. Let's bring in our international editor, Sophie Makwena. We've seen an outpouring on the ground, Sophie, and also we are understanding that dignitaries are there tonight, and of course there will be many at the funeral tomorrow, including some who've jetted in, like the former Nigerian president. Tell us more.
Yes, indeed, many are going to be there to pay their last respects, but also to say farewell to the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. But as you can see, the visuals there, the son next to Archbishop Thabo Makgoba leading that body. This is part of the African tradition where the eldest son is always at hand or there to ensure that everything goes according to the wishes of the person who has passed on, but also in relation to the traditions. When they arrived, you heard people talking there before the body was removed from the car. It's because they were talking to him. In the African culture, people believe that even though a person has passed on, he can still hear, and they were doing part of the traditional rituals, and therefore now they are getting there in the house and also ensuring that inside the house a similar situation will prevail, where they will start with talking to him, but also talking to whoever they believe in this culture in terms of where to from here. And you can see the son is leading all that. You know that in the culture, African culture, your eldest son is almost your peer in terms of the father. In other words, now he has to step in to ensure that everything is done according to the culture. And you heard one person saying, manje sesifuna aboshenge manje sesifuna aboshenge, hlehlani madoda, hlehlani. He was saying, now we want the clan to come forward. Everybody must take a step back. Now we want the clan to come forward to do the right thing as it's been done in terms of the culture. And of course, then you are correct, many international dignitaries will be there. We'll have people from the United Kingdom, from Germany, from Zambia, and of course, as you pointed out, the former Nigerian president, a friend to the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, is going to be there. But of course, for me, what is also important is the 3 former South African presidents will be there. You know, when Madiba passed on, we saw that picture of the former leadership of the country and the current leadership at that time, led by President Jacob Zuma being there. We are going to see a similar picture tomorrow because former President Jacob Zuma will be there, former President Kgalema Motlanthe will be there, former President Thabo Mbeki will be there, and the sitting President Cyril Ramaphosa will lead this powerful high-powered delegation of government and former government officials and ANC, of course.
And Sophie, you don't often see the current president and all the living former presidents reflecting together, and in the same room, I guess it just points to the importance of this event.
Very symbolic. I hope South Africans are watching and will be watching tomorrow that as there's a package that was earlier on air where we had different voices, particularly the former President Nelson Mandela, when he was alive, his views around the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi and the former President Thabo Mbeki, reflecting at one point in Parliament, saying no one is holy or no one can claim that he didn't make mistakes at some point in time. We will see that tomorrow. And you recall, even during the memorial, many parties were actually talking about, yes, some of the issues are controversial, but where to from here? And you recall that the EFF and is talking about that and a backlash, but many are saying now it's the same. The president is going to speak. So how do you criticize certain people and you leave out certain people when we can see that everybody is trying to ensure that peace prevails at this critical moment? And even the IFP is ensuring that everybody does have a say. They do acknowledge where there are issues, because even Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi himself said he was not a saint, and therefore at some point in time, after presenting or giving a report at the TRC on behalf of his political party, he pointed out that he is no saint. You'd recall that powerful image where he was crying, saying, yes, mistakes were done, but I think going forward, where to from here? We will continue to hate each other. But how do we handle such situation? You'd recall he received the standing ovation crying. And you'd recall at some point in time, it was in 1999 at Thokoza Memorial, where they were honoring those who died during the unrest. Former President Thabo Mbeki walking side by side with Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi to ensure that they demonstrate leadership, that yes, we are not proud of this part of the history, but as a nation, we have to find a way to move forward. And that's what Madiba's presidency all along was all about.
So, Sophie, we've heard from the IFP president that Mangosuthu Buthelezi has been vilified by the ANC. That's what he said. And then the EFF's Mbuyiseni Dlozi got up at the memorial and said Mangosuthu Buthelezi was a man of peace. So you see these divisions, and then he was accused of playing politics. I guess it suggests that the president has to tread carefully tomorrow.
Yes, the president will have to tread carefully tomorrow. This is a very sensitive moment, but also a sensitive province. You cannot, as a leader, create an animosity or, and make statements that are likely going to cause that tension. Because we are now moving towards elections, and you want a KZN province not to be a no-go area. All parties must be able to campaign, and therefore I think when he is delivering that message, he is going to have that in mind to say, as a leader of this country, as a man in charge right now, I have to pull the nation together, and I have to give a way forward in terms of how we handle the differences. I mean, President Ramaphosa was part of the talks at CODESA, and he is very aware, and he had a close relationship also with former President Nelson Mandela. He's fully aware that in terms of the ANC leadership, the senior leadership, some of them who are not here anymore, they wanted peace in this country. And therefore, but taking into consideration that there are families who are still aggrieved, and as we do that, we have to balance the two. And many of those families, we spoke to them leading to this funeral, and they were saying that yes, it happened, we were hurt, but we have taken a decision to forgive. And therefore, I think that's the spirit in relation to if you want to build a country, but you cannot erase the history, and you cannot be not thinking about those who feel aggrieved. You must also give them space to express their views. But as a leader, as the president of the country, he has to ensure that after tomorrow, nothing happens going forward, particularly ahead of elections. And the leadership of the IFP has done just that. Because I spoke to the former President Thabo Mbeki's office. They say he spoke to him on many occasions, even recently, asking that the former president must speak to the ANC as an elder to facilitate his return to the ANC. For me, it's not a return to be an active member of ANC or to be a real member of ANC, but how to close that chapter of ANC and IFP. And secondly, him saying the former president also looking at the relationship between Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi and the king. You know, the relationship got very, very tense recently. And these are the two main issues that he wanted the former president Thabo Mbeki to assist, because he wanted peace. So maybe those who are saying he was a man of peace, somehow they are vindicated, because at the end of the day he tried to ensure that he does show remorse, but also ensure that the country is united.
And we'll see how that is dealt with tomorrow, if that was his wish to be reconciled with the ANC, even having an ANC flag over the coffin. We'll come back to you, SABC News' international editor Sophie Mokoena. Thank you very much. But let's take you back to the homestead where the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has arrived. That's where we find our reporter Natasha Piri. Natasha, tell us what's happening right now.
Well, Francis, I'm actually joined by a member of the family, and also joined by the mayor of Zululand, and he'll just tell us the process from now on and quite explain what actually happened right now. Mr. Buthelezi, thank you so much for joining us in SABC News. So we saw the body of the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi being brought into that house. Can you just please explain what happens from now on?
Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has made his final journey home. Amabutho brought his body up as well at Wapindangene. He was received by the Archbishop of Cape Town, Archbishop Makgoba, and the clergy. And the church service is just about to start now, a short prayer service before the main funeral tomorrow.
We also understand that traditional rites have to be performed as well.
Well, we know that the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was Inkosi of the Buthelezi clan. He was Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation, and right now the family has been given space in the sacred crawl for them to come to terms as a family and do the necessary customs which they need to do, whereafter we will begin the short prayer service.
I mean, just as a family member, your personal experiences with him, how will you remember him? And I mean, what did you learn from the late Prince?
Firstly, as the Buthelezi family, we would like to express our heartfelt thanks for the outpouring of love. We have been overwhelmed by the support from all South Africans who have come here to pay their last respects to Prince Buthelezi. Today, the whole town of Ulundi came to a standstill as they honored a man who lived with values of integrity and ubuntu. And we hope that we, as the family who are left behind, and his party, the IFP, will continue to uphold that legacy.
I like the fact that you speak about the people of Ulundi. I mean, just speaking to them, they speak so much to the development of this area because of him. Some people are saying that they are employed because of him. There are schools, a lot of facilities and service deliveries actually made because of him.
When Prince Buthelezi stayed amongst his people, he never left his people. He shared in their sufferings and developed Zululand out of nothing into the economic giant it is today. Therefore, every family in Zululand has been touched by the leadership of Prince Buthelezi. We feel the void, but as a family, we feel strengthened by this comfort and love which we have received from all South Africans across the board.
You talk about the economy. I mean, one thing that I actually found out yesterday is that in the 1950s, he actually founded Ithala Bank. And you look at the bank years down the line, how it has evolved. It has over 300,000 clients, over 39 branches across, the country. And it was developed specifically for rural people who don't have commercial banks.
Well, whatever Prince Buthelezi started has stood the test of time. Like Ithala Bank is still alive even today because he has always had a far-reaching vision, not only for black people, but for all South Africans. And today we celebrate his legacy. He has arrived at home and we pause to reflect on the life of this great man.
You were also involved in IFP youth politics. Just looking at the party and looking at the trajectory of the party, you're heading to the polls next year. The IFP has recently signed the multi-party charter of South Africa, but yet you also have the ANC that says, let's preach the message of reconciliation.
I think the IFP owes it to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi to win back the province of KwaZulu-Natal in 2024. The people of KwaZulu-Natal have felt the leadership of Prince Buthelezi when the IFP was leading, and they yearn for that. Our people are ravaged by crime every day. They are ravaged by unemployment. They are ravaged by corruption. And I hope the IFP will uphold the legacy and do it for Umtwana to win the elections in the province next year.
Do you see the reconciliation process actually gaining fruition? You've heard the ANC Deputy President on Tuesday when he came to visit the family saying that in his memory they need to continue this process. His long-standing friend, Reverend Musa Zondi, also saying that his last wish was to reconcile his former party, the ANC, with the IFP. Is this something that will actually be a lived reality in his memory?
Well, it's a tragedy that the ANC did not reach out while Prince Buthelezi was still alive. It would have been much more worthwhile and more meaningful for them to reconcile and correct the propaganda that they spread about him while he was still alive. I think for us as a family and for the IFP, what is important is to uphold the legacy of Prince Buthelezi and to win back the province of KwaZulu-Natal back to the IFP.
Mr. Buthelezi, thank you so much for your time. Of course, that was a family representative, of course, and the mayor of Zululand, just giving some insights as to actually what happens from now on. There will be a church service later on here, Francis, in memory of the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. With that said, it's back to you in studio.
All right, thank you very much, Natasha. And let's go back to Professor Becky Ngomezulu from the Nelson Mandela University and also cultural expert Professor Musa Ulu. Let me start with you, Professor Ngomezulu. We were discussing earlier the rift between the IFP and the ANC, and you were talking about the historical ties. I mean, remember Mangosuthu Buthelezi said that OR Tambo approved of the IFP being formed. So how does the president handle that history? And then what happened after when he speaks tomorrow?
You are absolutely right, Francis. Indeed, the formation of Inkatha Inkululeko Wesizwe in 1975 happened after the blessings of the ANC in exile, including the leader of the party, that is the late Oliver Tambo. And the reason why it was called Inkatha Inkululeko Yesizwe is because they were trying to avoid a situation whereby the apartheid government was going to raise its eyebrows. They then claimed to be reviving what had been started by King Dinizulu called Inkatha kaZulu, so that at least it will be seen as a cultural movement and not necessarily as a political organization, which is why then, as I was saying to some of your colleagues, that some members of the ANC, both at national and provincial legislatures, were once part of the of Inkatha, because they were representing, Inkatha was representing the ANC. And that is why Inkatha used the colors of the ANC until on the eve of the 1994 general election. So the question then becomes, with Buthelezi gone, and with his last wish that there should be reconciliation between the ANC and the IFP, will this indeed happen? I'm doubtful, even though the leader of the party now, the Honorable Velenko Sentlabisa, and the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, made a commitment that they will do that. My doubts are occasioned by the fact that in KwaZulu-Natal, the IFP is working with the DA, and then at national level, the IFP is part of this multi-party pact, multi-party charter for South Africa, which is led by the DA, which was once called the Moonshot Pact. So the question then is, how do you do this reconciliation when at the same time you are forging relations with the DA? Of course, the response from the IFP will be the wish that Buthelezi had was not necessarily a coalition between the ANC and the IFP, but it was just a matter of wanting to see reconciliation between the two. How they are going to work that out is something that we'll be watching to see how it's going to pan out. But the promises have been made. Making a promise is one thing, fulfilling it is something different altogether. We'll watch and see.
Professor Olu, before we talk about the rituals, are you willing to comment on what you believe the prospects are for his dying wish to be realized, peace between the ANC and IFP?
Well, there was a time, thanks a lot, Prof. Ngomezulu, for outlining and also pointing out that it may be quite impossible. Can I confess that sometime last year, I think it was June, because I had many meetings with Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. So I had this one meeting where he spoke exactly about this wish for the reconciliation to happen to me. I shared this kind of wish with certain people, and it did not end very well. I can't see it happening because I think the IFP, as IFP, has created its own identity now. It's a full identity. The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is slightly different, by the way, from the ANC nationally. It's easier, for example, it was easier for me, for example, to talk to some informally, some senior ANC leaders nationally, than it could have been talking to local leadership. So I don't think that it will happen. However, what needs to happen now is a situation where they have to learn to respect each other's spaces and do lesser and lesser of phenomena like Ntoloism, where you wake up in the morning and shout, and then at one another. And then, of course, if they learn to respect one another in terms of their spaces, there shall be peace. I think the president did very well by taking this funeral to level 1 so that it does not become a provincial funeral. Because if it had been a provincial funeral, there would have been a disaster there in terms of relations between the two parties. So, yeah, it's problematic is in terms of how they view each other, very, very adversarial in approach.
Professor, I really appreciate this insight because you've spoken to people on the ground and you're giving us some insight into relations between the ANC and IFP in KwaZulu-Natal. Our international editor was saying we can't have violence in the province next year. It can't be a no-go area for politicians as we head to an election. Is that a possibility that it'll all flare up quite dramatically next year?
No, I don't think it will go that route. The problem now with political violence is that in KZN it's very silent, and it is within each political party, people vying for positions. It's big now to be a mayor or even to be a councillor. It become very influential. So it is the biggest problem, as Minister Beitel was saying at some stage, is within political parties where they start chasing each other around. What happens in the process is that some people will find it easier to relate to the other political party than within their own political parties. But I can't see the KwaZulu-Natal people going out to the level of the pre-1994 levels of violence. It won't happen. People are now a little bit more matured in terms of understanding politics and their needs. They will look for people who can deliver the services and who can respect them. So whatever, if the IFP and the ANC, I can't see them fighting openly, violently anymore. But what's going to happen is the contestation of positions within each political party, and you'll find a lot of that happening in the months leading to the elections because of what it is. I mean, I don't know, I can't remember what Professor Mangosuthu maybe knows, but to be an MP or an MPL for 5 years, you are quite secure financially speaking. So that's where the problem is now.
Yeah, and I mean, the research suggests that a lot of the political killing is about access to position, and then you also have access to resources, securing bidders that you like. Professor Mangosuthu, we were talking earlier about the maturity of the IFP that is required now. You said it'll be a test of the political maturity of the IFP, how it handles generally the election and going forward after the Prince's death. And I guess both sides have to show themselves to be mature to prevent any violence that would be cross-party.
Yeah, thank you very much, Francis.
Sorry, Professor Mangosuthu.
Yeah, thank you very much, Francis. First of all, let me echo the sentiments of my colleague, Professor Xolo, on two issues. One, intra-party violence is what is a problem now, not inter-party violence, which we saw happening previously. That is where the problem is. Because we have career politicians, people who would ordinarily not have jobs, and then they are seeing politics as the only mechanism available for them to amass wealth. That is where the problem starts. You no longer have a violence between the ANC and the IFP like we saw in the 1990s. It's a different ballgame altogether. And then, of course, I also agree with him that we don't foresee a situation where there will be outright political violence in KwaZulu-Natal in the same magnitude that we saw in the 1990s for the reasons he's just stated. But on the issue of political maturity that we talked about, I'll repeat that indeed the onus is on the current leadership on both sides of the equation. There is the ANC and the IFP. But the reason why we're emphasizing the IFP is because we're saying that they would like to basically carry on with Prince Buthelezi's legacy. And the best way they can do that is to make sure that they don't do a repeat of what happened in the NFP. You recall that the NFP was formed by the late Mamuzanele Gamagwaza-Msebi, and she did a fantastic job securing 6 seats in KwaZulu-Natal legislature, and then also 6 seats at the national level when they contested that election. And the party was on the upward trajectory until such time that she took ill, and then that's where things went wrong. When she passed on, that was basically the last thing that happened. Instead of the NFP following the constitution of the party, they started fighting for positions, which comes back to the point we are making that intra-party squabbles are more problematic than inter-party squabbles. Look at where the NFP is now. It has been suspended by the IEC simply because it could not survive after the passing of Mamgama-Gwaza-Msebi. Is the IFP ready to avoid that situation? That is $1 million question. That is why then I keep on saying the maturity of the party is what is going to decide whether the IFP grows or it dies.
All right, thank you both, Professor Becky Mngomezulu, Professor Musa Ulu as well. Thank you for your time. Let's wrap it up there and just a recap. The body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has arrived at the Buthelezi homestead, and right now behind closed doors those rituals are taking place that Professor Ulu outlined for us earlier, and we will check in with what's happening at the homestead at the top of the hour. See you soon. Welcome back to The Full View on SABC News. Hostel indunas in Katlehong, east of Johannesburg, have hailed Ekurhuleni's Kochte department for funding their trip to KwaZulu-Natal for IFP Emeritus President Mangosuthu Buthelezi's funeral. Buthelezi died last Saturday at the age of 95. He has been given a special official funeral Category 1.
we are coming to you from Katlehong, where Induna from different hostels are actually putting in last-minute preparations to head down to bury the late Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Well, I'm actually joined now by Lucky Manyati, who's actually the secretary for Induna from here in Katlehong. Babu Manyati, ithingibongela isikhathi sakho. Ngizocela usichazele ukuthi amalungiselelo okuya KZN ahamba njani?
No, amalungiselelo aye KZN ahamba kahle. Ngoba izolo besinanesikhumbuzo, so sinamabhasi awu5 esinikwe wona la eRuleni, so ngapha eKatlehong iyodwa ibhasi, so sinabantu esizohamba nabo abawu65 esizongena nabo ebhasini le esinikezwe iDepartment eCopter.
Okwamanje ukhulumela eKwesine hostel or ukhulumela bonke abantu abazobe baphuma from la eKatlehong?
Ngikhulumela eKatlehong okwamanje. Yes, ngoba amabhasi awu5 ngapha eKatlehong iyodwa. Ngisakhulumela yona manje. Yeah.
And then i-role le izinduna izobe bazobe bayidlala izoba yini?
No, induna iqhaza lazo ezizolibamba kakhulu ukuvunula, zizongena emabuthweni, zobe ivunule, zobe ihamba namabutho emngcwabeni. Yilokho iqhaza elizokubamba induna ukuvunula zingene emabuthweni.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, as you can hear, this is Mr. Lucky Manyati, who's actually the secretary for Induna here in Katlehong, actually saying that, you know, preparations are actually going very well, and that some of the Indunas who are here will actually be heading down. They will be having a bus of about 65, representing about 4 hostels that are here in Katlehong, that will be heading down to KwaZulu-Natal to go and assist in terms of the burial. He was saying that some of the Induna will be forming part of the Amabuto, as they will be wearing their a traditional regalia to form a guard of honor, as you know, the procession will actually be moving. Well, at the moment, I'm going to speak to Mr. Njabulo Hlabisa, who's actually an Induna from Mazibuko Hostel. Babu Hlabisa, ngibongela isikhathi sakho. Sicela usichazele nje ukuthi njenge hostel avele yakwa Mazibuko nina nizohamba ningaki, nikhiphe malini for ucontributor nje for le trip?
Angibonga ukuthola isikhathi Mazibuko siyahamba sibaningi sihambayo, kodwa transport sinikezwe isiphi, sinikezwe iCopter, umnyango weCopter, asikhokhanga mali for ukuyongcwaba ubaba uMangosuthu Ulundi. Sizohamba namhlanje ntambama, sizobuya kusasa. Sibonga kakhulu nje ngetransport abasinikeze yona, siyomela bonke amaZulu le Ulundi.
And then niwakhethe kanjani abahlali bakwama hostel ukuthi baniphelezele lapho vele?
Yeah, sikhethile abantu esohamba nabo ngokuba uncane kwetransport, baningi abantu bebefuna ukuhamba. Ngoba uncane kwetransport bese sikhetha labo sibakhethayo esazi ukuthi akusibona abantu abazofe behlupha masifika phambili.
Okay, asibonge, ngiyabonga. Well, as you can hear, that's the Induna Njabulo Hlabisa from Mazibuko Hostel, actually saying that due to the scarcity of transport heading down to KZN, they actually had to select some of the residents from hostels that they know will not actually cause any mischief once they are that side. And he's also saying that he's grateful to the Cocta department, which actually contributed for the transportation that they will be using to head down to KZN, and that they actually did not have to contribute financially towards this trip. We'll actually try and find some of the people who are actively preparing in terms of putting together their traditional regalia, and those that are actually just packing their bags and ironing their clothes, preparing for this particular trip.
welcome back. If you've been with us on The Full View, welcome. If you've just tuned in, it's great to have you with us. I'm Frances Hurd. And of course, we've been following the procession in KwaZulu-Natal, in Ulundi. The body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi now home at the homestead ahead of the funeral tomorrow. We'll bring you more details as the evening unfolds. And of course, the ceremonial part, those rituals being done behind closed doors by the family right now. With your sporting action, welcome back. Back to the action. Zai Khan, what's coming up?
Action is the operative word, Francis. Indeed, the Proteas. My goodness, what a match we have that's currently underway at Supersport Park in Centurion. The Proteas have smashed 416 runs. Incredible. Can the Australians catch up with that? Well, as it stands, they're losing wickets like crazy. But we'll keep you updated here on Full View Sport.
In your top stories, the body of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi has arrived at his Mahlabathini home in northern KwaZulu-Natal ahead of tomorrow's funeral. Barry Steenkamp, the father of murdered Reeva Steenkamp, died in his sleep last night.
Plenty of excitement with the Boks as we get to find out how they will fare. Their match will be on Sunday. It's an early kickoff. The Boks are keeping their cards close to their chest.
The acting CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, Vern Harris, says late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi shared some personal experiences when he lost some of his children to AIDS. Vern has also discussed the relationship between the late former President Nelson Mandela and Prince Buthelezi. And of course, if you've just tuned in, we can tell you that his body has arrived at the homestead in Ulundi. Ceremonial rites are being done, and then a closed casket will be put in the marquee tonight ahead of that special funeral tomorrow.
A long relationship, of course. I mean, Madiba had just left University of Fort Hare when Buthelezi went to the university, also became an activist, then joined the Youth League, the ANC Youth League, as Madiba was moving on into other ANC structures. So that goes back a very long way. And of course that relationship, given the political turbulence over many years, went through patches, good patches and bad.
Well, let's look at this picture here. The government of national unity. I see Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi there.
Well, for me it's a very powerful symbol, because through the late 1970s and 1980s, the ANC and Inkatha became adversaries, and Madiba and Buthelezi, Shenge, became political adversaries. Madiba from prison was reaching out to the ANC leadership, looking for ways of avoiding a bloodbath. And well, we failed. We all failed in that endeavor. But peace was made, and a government of national unity was set up in 1994. And there you see.
Okay, let's move. We see other pictures here of particularly, I can see Kwadesa, the talks. At times, it got very difficult, particularly when the IFP had to take a decision in terms of their participation in elections. And on the other hand, people were dying.
Well, I think this was the terrible period between 1984 and 1994. We like to say today that we avoided a civil war, but actually there was a civil war in KwaZulu-Natal and parts of the Rand. And this is the most difficult part of the legacy of Prince Buthelezi, is what was happening in this period where he was threatening not to participate in elections. And actually the violence that was happening was giving him leverage at the negotiation table. this is a part of our history we still have to reckon with.
Well, when you look at the relationship, do you think later years, before Madiba left office, it got better?
Oh, absolutely. I think both of them exemplify a form of leadership which doesn't require forgiveness. It doesn't require that you love one another. It requires that you determined to work together and to build something that is sustainable together.
How was the relationship then after Madiba left office?
Well, I think in that period they began to find each other in a way that you hadn't seen in earlier years, where they shared this rejection of government policies on HIV/AIDS, and of course they then shared the loss of a child, a son, each of them to AIDS. And I saw them here on a number of occasions spending time together. I think that as old men they were finding each other in a way they hadn't as younger people.
What can we learn as South Africans in terms of how that relationship evolved?
Well, I think what we can learn from that relationship is that betrayal is part of the human experience, and betrayals can be overcome. And that work of reckoning with the past, but always with a view to building a future that is liberatory. And I think the two of them, I look at the ways in which Prince Buthelezi was an excellent parliamentarian over many, many years as another demonstration of how you can find a different identity and play a different role, and that past doesn't have to drag you right down. I served in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I know the evidence that was brought of his complicity in the multiple violations that were happening. So that anger I understand. I think the challenge to all of us is to hold complexity. Just refuse the either or. Either he was a warlord, a Bantustan leader, a friend of the apartheid regime, or he was a good leader, a leader within the early stages of building democracy. It doesn't have to be either or. We hold this all together, and I don't think South Africans will find that reconciliation we reached for in the 1990s, and we failed in that project. But we will reach it if we learn.
Earlier we showed you the live scenes, the hearse, the vehicle carrying the casket, entering the homestead in Ulundi. Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi's body coming home, as it were. And the question of the day, do you think the burial preparations are fitting for someone of his stature, for Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi? Tell us if you've been following and what you think. Of course, there will be a lot happening tonight at the homestead. The idea was that the body would arrive before sunset. A lot happening tonight ahead of the special official funeral, Category 1, tomorrow. In other news, Barry Steenkamp, the father of murdered Reeva Steenkamp, last night died in his sleep. The Reeva Rebecca Steenkamp Foundation's Facebook page announcing news of his passing, describing it as sudden and peaceful. The 80-year-old was thrust into the spotlight after Reeva was shot dead by her boyfriend, Paralympian Oscar Pistorius, on Valentine's Day in 2013.
Barry Steenkamp never stopped grieving for his daughter Reeva. He also never found closure and the answers he was looking for from Pistorius. The former athlete is halfway through his 13-year jail sentence for the murder of Reeva Steenkamp. Barry Steenkamp also took up the baton in the fight against femicide. On the 10th anniversary of the death of his daughter in February this year, Steenkamp told the SABC that there are thousands of families struggling like they are.
It's Reeva's day.
But also, we must think of all the other people who are going through the same grievances that we are going through. So it's not only us. There are thousands and thousands of parents out there who have had children and daughters, and that you see it happens every day. And this is something, you know, something has to be done about that. It's not only that, and people can't come to June and myself and say, I know how you feel and this and that, because it hasn't happened to them. So our grievances and pain goes out to all those people as well.
The family spokesperson, Tanya Kun, says his passing was sudden but peaceful. Steenkamp was also in poor health.
Barry will be remembered for the gentle giant that he was, but also for the profound sadness that was part of his life, as he could never accept and come to terms and find peace with Reva's death. We now find solace in the fact that he is with Reva, and I hope that he now finds the peace that he deserves.
Barry is survived by June and his son Adam from his first marriage, and his stepdaughter Simone Cowburn, who is June Steenkamp's daughter. Lerato Fekisi, SABC News, Gqeberha.
Another mass anti-drugs march has taken place in Pretoria. Various organisations from across South Africa united against the scourge of drug dealing and abuse that is crippling the youth in many communities. They're also calling for stronger action against police who protect drug dealers.
A show of solidarity. Several organizations came together walking through the streets of Tshwane against drug abuse. The youth also showed up in their numbers as they are the most affected by the scourge of drugs in their communities.
What we're demanding, it's a drug-free society, because our society has gone through drugs. Our kids are not going to school anymore.
Put South Africa First, that organized the march, says the country is doomed if the youth is not safe from drug addiction.
90% of youth in our country, they are all addicts. And it cannot be in a country, that means this country does not have a future. So we're here to say to the president, enough is enough, you need to take a stand. Actually, this should be a state of emergency. It should have been treated like the pandemic. He needs to deploy SNDF and SAP to raid all these buildings that have turned into drug hubs.
I think for one, the shortage of staff members at our SAPs, that's where it starts, because you find one detective that has a high caseload of over 300 cases. We find that, when they send the evidence to forensics labs, it takes about 3 months to come back. The important and one of the ways that we can deal with corruption within SAPs is to deploy counter to your hotspots, to your communities where you know that drugs are rife. Deploy counter within SAPs.
In the LGBT community, we are faced with many drug abuse from juju, homophobia and discrimination. So we are saying this initiative is going to take us further, because it's going to make us be the better people that we want to be in the LGBTI people, and also we're going to get the acceptance that we want. Thank you.
Xolani Khumalo, who has since become a face of drug-busting programs, says everyone must join the war against drugs.
We don't want people sitting back because of, as black people, we have this thing of once you appoint police to do something you want them to do, you relax as a citizen. So I'm encouraging everyone to stand up and help government. We are the government.
We are standing up as Santalco because we are the biggest public transport organization, and we say police must be confident that we will work with them at all costs. They should not back off, because they are the ones to execute the arrest and so on. But we will give information when necessary as Santalco.
Some mothers whose sons died due to drug addiction shared their pain.
I buried him on the 7th of July. Also, Palafala, my neighbor, also was buried at April. There are many children are dying in our community with this drug. So we lost our sons and daughters. Please, government can help. Please help us. We plead to government.
I didn't know that my son is taking drugs up until he becomes sick and I take him to the hospital. She then revealed that, Mom, drugs are dangerous.
The Young Communist League of South Africa called for no bail for drug dealers.
Here to call for the re-establishment of the
South African Narcotics Bureau that was decommissioned in 2004. We are calling for the effective implementation of the National Drug Master Plan.
Meanwhile, through their memorandums, the organizations want the president to implement the National Anti-Drug Master Plan, secure the country's borders and deal with drug lords decisively. Patricia Fasache, SABC News in Pretoria.
ACDP leader Reverend Kenneth Mashwe has called on government to backtrack on its decision to introduce the single marriage bill. Mashwe says the bill will work against God, putting the country into a dire situation. Party members have painted the Church Street in Pretoria blue to show their opposition to the single marriage bill. The public has been asked to comment on the draft legislation which seeks to rationalise laws in terms of various forms of marriage. In its preamble, the bill declares that it seeks to recognise marriages entered into regardless of religious, cultural, sex, gender, sexual orientation or any other beliefs of the parties.
The ACDP hitting the streets of the capital, Pretoria. The party says it's against the proposed single marriage bill.
With the single marriage bill, they want to eradicate any thinking in any mind that it is God who started marriage.
The bill seeks to consolidate all marriage acts of the country. ACDP President Reverend Kenneth Mashwe says government is trying to do what he termed to undo the creation of God.
Single marriage bill is anti-Christ. Reject it. Because Christ said a man and a woman. That one, and what they want to do is anti-Christ.